Investment advisor services offered through AE Wealth Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. AE Wealth Management, LLC and Swan Capital are independent entities. While we believe the information included is reliable, we cannot guarantee its accuracy. Opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and are not intended as investment advice or a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security. Please consult your financial professional before making any investment decision.
It's time for What Your Money Would Say with Andrew McNair. Andrew is president and CEO of Swan Capital and founder of the Veteran Benefit Project. He has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Fox Business, Forbes, and MarketWatch, and is also the author of 2 books. This is What Your Money Would Say with Andrew McNair.
We're live here on What Your Money Would Say. I'm your host, Andrew McNair.
And I'm your co-host, Scott Malik.
And on What Your Money Would Say, we like to take financial ugly ducklings and turn them into financial swans. But what does it mean to be a financial swan? It means to sleep well at night. And that's why I started my firm, Swan Capital, which is a local wealth management firm dedicated to helping retirees finally sleep well at night, dealing with retirement planning and legacy planning issues.
And similar to Andrew, I started the law offices of Scott Malik, which is my practice to help my clients do estate planning, elder law, and estate administration, and help my clients make sure that they do timely planning for untimely events.
And one of those untimely events has to be how to pay for long-term care. And again, if you're just in your 50s and 60s, this is going to be a perfect show for you, because we're also going to talk about not only what the state of healthcare is today, but what it might be for the next 10 to 20 years down the road. And so I want to jump in and cite a really good source for you to look up on your own, and that is the Genworth Long-Term Care Survey. And it's a survey that's taken every year, and they do it across the country. So if you have a parent that's living in Virginia, you can look up Virginia's cost. You can look up California. But I'm going to talk about Pensacola, Florida's area, and this will probably surround Pensacola, even in the Milton and Mobile area. It'll be pretty close in numbers. So when we jump into the state of healthcare, I want to explain a few definitions, and hopefully Scott can help us out with explaining what home healthcare is.
So home healthcare obviously is just like it sounds. It's when you're staying at home and you're receiving, assistance with your activities of daily living. It could be range all the way up to receiving skilled nursing at home. There's a big variance between the beginning of home health care and the end of home health.
Yeah, and these are the seniors that are just adamant about staying in their own home. I mean, I remember my grandfather, the only way he was going to assisted living was with 2 feet right out in front of him, and you'd have to have like 5 people to tear him out of his home, because that's where all of his great memories were. And so a lot of people don't want to leave their home. And so we always tell people, that's definitely an option, but it's going to be a luxury option.
Yeah, it's definitely a privilege. I mean, that's one thing I think a lot of people don't understand. We talk about all the time, and I know Andrew's going to get into numbers and specifics for the cost, but it definitely starts out the cheapest, but it always ends up being the most expensive.
Sure. You think what you're doing is you're basically paying an agency $15 to $21 an hour to have a caregiver come in and sit with your loved one. They do a lot of great, jobs and activities that someone as a senior would need help with, like medication management. They'll do transportation. They'll prepare meals, clean around the house. It's a really great service. And so for that $15 to $21 an hour, at first, like Scott was saying, it doesn't cost a lot. So you're talking maybe a couple $100s a month, so very manageable. Now keep in mind, you're still paying for food, you're paying for taxes and insurance, but then we have families right now in Pensacola that are paying over $12,000 a month because they need that round-the-clock care. And so, this is $12,000 a month that's coming out of their pockets. So in this Genworth Long-Term Care Survey, they're saying that the average cost, if you do it per day for a home health care company, is going to be $113. $113 a day. And so that's staying in your own home, which is almost the cost of what it is to be in assisted living as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, assisted living is, right now, I believe daily is only about 100 actually. So,
right.
And that's why I said it starts out when you only need, 1 or 2 hours of assistance, or maybe, once a week or so on and so forth, that it does start out being a relatively cheap and good way to.
And it fills the gap.
Yeah,
while
exactly.
you're still working, you could have them being taken care of a loved one. And it totally makes sense. If you're making $30 an hour, you don't want to quit your job to take care of your parents because it's cheaper for them to, pay someone $15 an hour. The next is assisted living. Now, assisted living is basically a new concept. It hasn't been around for 100 years, and that's what a lot of people think of when they think of retirement homes. They think of people just sitting in their wheelchair, and that's not the case. There's people clients that we have that walk 2 miles a day in assisted living. So it is actually a very vibrant, very active community. They're playing bingo. They're having loads of activities. They're taking trips to the casinos. They're just living life, but they actually have a nurse that's on site. So if in case anything happens, they could get the medical support they need.
And I think it's important the distinction he just made with assisted living. There's also independent living facilities that are kind of in this same
bridge that gap.
Yeah, bridge that gap. But the assisted living that people think of, people always come to me and they say, I saw this on the TV or in the movie, and they have this concept that Hollywood has portrayed about, like as you mentioned, slumped over in a wheelchair, nobody's doing anything. But even skilled nursing facilities aren't really like that anymore. So it's really important to understand that assisted living is just to really help you make sure that you're still active and still doing the things that you love.
Because sitting in your home and being a recluse is not a good idea. It's not good for your brain. We're social creatures, so we need to have that constant stimulant with people around us. The next is, and so the average cost of that's $3,000, $3,048 to be exact. Now I will tell you my personal, just experience. It's closer to $3,600 based on the level of care you need, and that's one person, by the way. So if you have a spouse and you're bringing your spouse with you, I hope, it's going to be $750 to $1,000 second person fee.
And remember, that's the average. So you do have facilities that are cheaper than that, but you also have facilities that are much more expensive than that. I mean,
that's right.
They range from anywhere. I know that the range is anywhere from about $2,000 a month to about $6,000 a month. So the analogy Andrew always likes to use is, do you want the Pinto or do you want the Mercedes-Benz?
Right. And this is talking about where you're going to be living for, a 10-plus year chapter of your life. So it's very important. And then the last stage is what a lot of people think about at first is a nursing home. A nursing home does have a higher level of care.
I'm going to stop them right there. We don't really call them nursing homes anymore. At least they don't like to be called
nursing
homes anymore. They like to be called skilled nursing facilities.
Right. And so the Genworth survey that I'm looking at calls them nursing homes, but the average cost is $7,087. And we see on a regular basis, that's for a semi-private room. For a private room, that's this number, the $7,695 number, is more what we see on a daily basis. People are paying $7,500 to $8,000 as we speak here in Escambia County to pay for a nursing home.
That's per month.
Per month. And a lot of people think that, Medicare is going to pick up the tab forever, or that TRICARE, Obamacare is going to pick up the tab, and that's not the reality. What's going to happen is after your Medicare days run out, you're on your own, and you're going to have to start dipping into your assets until they're depleted or altogether gone, which we'll get into.
And you have to, again, that's the math that you talk about. You're talking about $100,000 a year. I mean, you could have saved your whole life, and $100,000 a year is going to go real quick.
Very, very true, Scott. And so if you're just tuning into What Your Money Would Say, I'm your host, Andrew McNair.
And I'm your co-host, Scott Malik.
And on What Your Money Would Say, we're going to talk about the state of healthcare as well as some ways to help pay for it with VA benefits. And so, again, this is not a pre-recorded show. This is a live show, and you can call the station at 478-3116. That's 478-3116. And so if you're in your 50s or 60s, I hope you're not tuning us out, because these costs, unfortunately, are not going to get any cheaper. Social Security only increased at 0.3% last year. So what are we going to do when these costs are increasing anywhere from 1% to 4%? Well, we have to start building a plan, because in 2026, not 20 years, not 30 years when you potentially need it, but just 10 years from now, 2026. It's crazy to say it like that. I mean, I feel like the Jetsons are going to be around by then. But so,
well, Back to the Future was what, 2015?
That's weird.
It's
weird. So 2026 for home health care by the day is going to be $152 a day.
That's an increase of $40 or $39 a month.
Yeah, it's a day. a day. And then assisted living, which was $3,000, is going to be $4,000. So if you have the average, which is about $3,600 here in Pensacola, that could be $5,297 for one person. So we have to start planning for these expenses. And then lastly, nursing home, which is $7,600 today, is going to be $10,300 in 10 years. So we have to start building a plan of not making sure our assets are protected so we don't see them just spin away in a few years.
Yeah. And I know Andrew mentioned that we are a live show and that you can call in. If you do not feel comfortable calling in, you have questions for us that you want to call the office, my number at my practice is 850-435-4661. That's 850-435-4661, and Andrew can give you his number.
And at the Veteran Benefit Project, which is a great lead-in, we help families apply for hundreds of veterans every year for a Veteran Aid in Attendance, which is a program to help pay for the cost of private caregivers, home health care agencies, skilled nursing, and assisted living for veterans and their spouses. And you can call us to see if you're eligible for up to $2,127 a month, tax-free for the rest of your life, by calling 850-380-5137. That's 850-380-5137.
He threw me off with the new numbers. I forgot we got a $7 bump.
Yeah, so these benefits do increase in step with Social Security and military retirement pay.
Like 0.5%.
Yeah, just, a rounding error, really. So when it comes to how to pay for it, I want to talk about veterans benefits because we live in a great community full of honorable men and women that served our country, and the last thing they need is to have these benefits out there and them never hear about it. And so it's our mission with the Veteran Benefit Project, an organization I started 5 to 6 years ago to help get the word out. And where my story starts is with my grandfather. So my grandfather and me were like best buddies. And so he was a World War II, Korean War, and Vietnam veteran. And, raised in the Great Depression, it prepares you to be a preparer for any circumstance that you don't have any idea it's going to turn out. And so he was one of those guys that saved everything. He was very frugal. He bought all the insurances. He would cross every T, dot every I, and he bought long-term care insurance. Paid into it for 20 years, over $100,000 invested, and unfortunately got a big letter that the company was having insolvency issues. So it called into question what benefits it would pay out for him. So that's why we looked into veterans benefits. And at that time, there wasn't a lot of resources. So going to the VA clinic, you pull out the VA handbook. This benefit was only taking up 2 pages of that benefit booklet, which was 250 pages, 2 pages. I thought, this is a big disconnect. But when I found out how these benefits worked, I said, this is like the best thing since sliced bread. So I started sharing it on this very radio show, and it's went viral. We help literally hundreds of families apply for this. So if you want to make sure that your loved one is eligible, again, I highly encourage you to call our office at 850-380-5137. So let's talk about how do you become eligible for Veteran Aid in Attendance.
So there are 4 qualifications. There are a few more qualifications.
Sure, but this is the general ones.
Yes, the general. First of all, you can't be dishonorably discharged. Obviously, here we help a lot of people that served our military very honorably, very, distinguished. Yep. And so, we don't run into this very often. And so, that's one major qualification.
And out of the 5 discharges, as long as it's not dishonorably discharged, you're going to be good to go there. The next has to do with length of service. In America, these things called pensions feel like they're becoming a thing of the past. How long do you have to work?
A thing of the past. They are a thing of the past.
Right. Unless you work for the state or something, yes. It's very rare to get one.
It's still just a retirement plan that you've paid into your whole life.
Correct.
It's not even really a pension.
And so, how long do you, if you were or are getting a pension, how long did you have to work?
Most of the time, it's 30 plus years.
Yeah, you had to work a long time. So it shocks people when we tell them they only had to serve 90 days active service with at least 1 day during a wartime period. That's right, 90 days active service with at least 1 day during a wartime period. And so that means you didn't have to go through the marshes in Vietnam. You didn't ever have to leave the United States. You never had to be in combat. You never had to be injured. You only had to serve the call of your country, which was 90 days active service with at least 1 day during a wartime period. So again, don't disqualify yourself too fast, because there's a lot of people that do that and they miss out.
And the next two are kind of similarly related. You have to be either disabled or over age 65. Which obviously a lot of our clients are over the age of 65.
Yeah, they got a few gray hairs. They're starting to think about, these medical concerns, right?
Yeah, and there's a large retirement community in Florida, or especially Florida, obviously, but in Pensacola too. I mean, and so we have the opportunity to help a lot of people, and especially, like you said, with this community being as veteran-oriented as it is.
And I want to make sure that even if you're in your 50s and 60s, this applies to you, because a lot of people say, Andrew, this doesn't apply to me. I'm in great health. Well, the alternative to getting old ain't so good. So I would be preparing to get very old. And so if you are planning on getting old, you have to start making some of these preparations.
And even if you're not a veteran or anything like that, so many people know veterans in this town that it's good to just reach out and say, hey, maybe you want to give this give them a call.
That actually just happened the other day. So we helped a client, and she's a teller at a bank, and she shared it with just a member of the credit union or the bank she worked at, and they called us. I'm like, how cool is that? That's what it's about. We live in a community where we share great information to help the people around us. Number 4 is you have to have a medical need or help with your ADLs. That's a jargon in the medical field. ADLs stand for activities of daily living. So things like meal preparation, transportation, bathing, undressing. If you have trouble with eyesight, could be thrown into that. There's a long list that the VA considers activities of daily living. And so we can walk through with you and your family, with you and your loved one. We can walk through with your older uncle that you're helping out, or your aunts or your parents, and make sure that y'all are eligible and meet these criteria, because we're talking about $2,127 a month tax-free for the rest of your life. It is a very large benefit. So before we take a commercial break, I do want to give you the number to the station. This is a live show, and we're talking about veterans benefits. So if you're a veteran or a widow of a veteran and have a question about veterans benefits, especially about aid and attendance, please give us a call at 478-3116. Now, please don't, swerve and hit somebody. We'll repeat that phone number again. It's 478-3116, and we'll be happy to answer your question after a short break.
Today's financial landscape can be rough. One of the most important aspects of planning is choosing the right guide to help you navigate the road to retirement. Andrew McNair and the team at Swan Capital is dedicated to providing the very best service in the retirement planning industry today. Swan Capital is a full-service independent wealth management firm dedicated to providing guaranteed custom income plans that you cannot outlive. Contact Andrew McNair at Swan Capital 850-380-9558. That's 850-380-9558. The difference between Swan Capital and you retire once. We help people retire every day. You should be enjoying your retirement years, not letting worry keep you up at night. Swan Capital. Sleep well at night. Contact Andrew McNair at Swan Capital 850-380-9558. That's 850-380-9558. Again, that's 850-380-9558.
The Veteran Benefit Project, founded by Andrew McNair, president of Swan Capital, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping veterans and widows of veterans with long-term care expenses by qualifying for the VA's Aid and Attendance Benefit. Learn how to receive over $24,000 per year from the VA towards long-term health care. There is absolutely no fee associated with our assistance to the veteran, the widow of a veteran, their families, or any retirement community. Our goal is to preserve the dignity of the veteran and to reduce the dependency on the Medicaid system. Again, learn how to receive over $24,000 per year from the VA. Contact the Veteran Benefit Project 850-380-5137. That's 850-380-5137. 850-380-5137. Look us up on the web, myveteranbenefit.com. At the Veteran Benefit Project, we are committed to helping you secure the benefits you deserve.
We're live here on What Your Money Would Say.
He's your host, Andrew McNair.
I am the host.
And I'm your co-host, Scott Malik.
So we're back from break, and we're talking about the state of health care, and that the average cost of assisted living is $3,048 based on this Genworth long-term care survey. And that in the next 10 years, it's going to be over $4,000 per person. So you have to add an extra $1,000 for like a second person fee. So these are really large expenses that, unfortunately, we all have to look forward to in our 70s, 80s, and 90s. And so we want to make sure that you're prepared for them. And so one of the ways to prepare is making sure that you're going to leverage all the benefits that you're eligible for, which one that our Veteran Benefit Project organization helps families out with is called Veteran Aid in Attendance. And it's a benefit that pays up to $2,127 a month. And so that's what we're going to dig in deep to today. And so we were talking about that you had to serve at least 90 days active service with at least 1 day during a wartime period. And that you had to be over age 65 or disabled, which, again, that's a lot of people that's in that category. So speaking about those wartime service dates, I said you had to serve at least 1 day in it. So if you look at World War II, when did World War II end, Scott? Now, you know this answer, but when would most people say?
Most people would probably guess 45.
And that wouldn't be a bad guess because August the 7th, 1945 is what most historians will say is the end of World War II, depending on German or Japanese
surrender. It also
surrender.
depends on the generation that you ask, because you watch these videos like those comedians walking around the streets anymore, and most of these kids nowadays don't know anything about
Don't know anything about the history. They just know about the now.
I sound like an old guy when I say
Yeah,
that.
you do sound like an old guy, but it's all right.
These young whippersnappers.
These whippersnappers, so we're down here in Mayberry. All right, so in World War II, they actually extended the date. So December 7th, 1941 to December 31st, 1946. So that makes sure that any soldier that was getting in and around that period would still be covered. And then you have the Korean War, that was from June 27th, 1950 to January 31st, 1955. And then Vietnam, which was a long war, of August 5th, 1964 to May 7th, 1975. And then you have Gulf War from August 2nd, 1990 to the present. So these are, periods of wartime that if you are serving today or served, that you need to keep in mind because these benefits are very substantial. And I want to jump right into it. These benefits are separated by marital status. I want to go over the three major benefits that we apply for families for. The first one is the veteran single benefit. This is if a veteran is widowed themselves, never married, divorced. Somehow they're single and they're going into assisted living. And again, it's $3,500, $3,600 a month. They're wondering, how am I going to pay for this? I got Social Security. I have a small pension, but how am I going to pay for it? The reality is you're going to need some help because it is very expensive. And aid and attendance will pay, which is unbelievable to me, $1,794 a month on top of your income to help offset these expenses if you meet all the eligibility requirements.
And you have to remember, we were talking about the average cost being right now, $3,500 a month of assisted living. And so, that's over half the cost right there.
Right.
And so, that's a huge benefit that a lot of people are overlooking. And that's why I think there's so much popularity being garnered with the assistance in helping receive this benefit.
Absolutely. And then you have those widows. And this is what's really, serious because widows, their husbands, their spouses will pass and they'll live 7, 12 years maybe as a widow. And they, Social Security is not a 2-for-1 deal. They'll lose a Social Security check. They get the greater of the two of the Social Security checks. And now they get half of a pension or no pension because their spouse didn't select survivor benefit on their pension. And they're worried. They're saying, how am I going to make ends meet? And then when they get to the part where they need to pay for healthcare expenses of $3,500 a month, they're saying there's just no way I'm going to be able to afford it. So they're having to ask money from their kids. I don't want that to be your story because there are widows that didn't know about this benefit, and when they did, it completely changed their finances. $1,153 could be eligible for a widow that was married to a wartime veteran.
And this is one of the most underserved areas because, as like Andrew said, it's not just that they don't know that the benefit's out there. They don't think they're eligible because they weren't the veteran.
Right.
And so this area, particularly with widows of veterans or widowers, I guess.
Widowies. I don't know how it works
for,
either.
For when the men are. But anyway, And so, like I said, this is one of the most underserved areas, and it's a huge benefit that's being lost. There's so much money out there that if it's not utilized, it just gets shifted to other
like $22
programs.
billion with a B. It's a lot of money out there that is put aside for veterans benefits, and we have to make sure we go out and make those claims, because if you don't, they're going to find other ways to spend it, and I doubt they'll.
Yes, they will.
And the government's probably not the best money manager in the world. So if you're a widow of a wartime veteran, that was the last spouse you were married to. You didn't even have to be married to him while he served. That's okay. But you had to be married to him. It was the last, or him or her, and that had to be the last spouse. Again, unfortunately, I don't make all the rules, but divorce actually separates you from those benefits. So that's why we just tell you, just kill them. That way you get your benefits.
No. Your attorney friend will tell you not to.
My attorney friend says don't kill him. Now, if you do kill him, just try to get away with it. But continuing on, veteran and spouse benefits. So if you're a veteran,
I don't endorse that statement.
Okay, so we have all the disclosures, all right? So veteran and spouse benefits are for the veteran and the spouse that both need some assistance. Maybe not at the same level, but they both need some help. And so, again, for two people, you're looking at the average cost of $4,500 to $5,000 for assisted living. And this benefit will pay $2,127 a month tax-free.
Yep, and like I said, it's like I said with the veteran single, I mean, that's half the cost. I mean, it's a huge benefit. That goes from being, worried about where you're going to pay and how you're going to pay for this assistance versus, not having to worry and being able to, still send gifts Christmas.
Yeah.
Probably stealing your line.
No, that's all right, because it's real life. I mean, people are struggling financially how to pay for assisted living, and these benefits exist, and you need to apply for them if you're eligible. Now, this show is live. You are turning into What Your Money Would Say, where we're talking about veterans benefits in the state of health care in 2017. And we want you to get your questions answered. If you're thinking about that question, someone else is, so don't keep it to yourself. So call the station at 478-3116. That's 478-3116. And now, if you say, Andrew, I'm just a little shy, I'm not going to call, put my name out there, my alias. I just wanted to ask to see if I'm eligible, and I want to schedule that intake you've been talking about. That intake, which is a 30-minute meeting to see if you or a loved one, like your uncle, your parents who's living at home, or has your brother taking care of your mother, you need to see if they're eligible by calling our organization at 850-380-5137. That's 850-380-5137. Again, the Veteran Benefit Project does not charge a fee. We don't even get paid on the back end. It's just a huge community outreach. We literally talk to thousands of people every year. So it's really great to, help out the community where we can, because we've been so blessed by this community.
And similar to Andrew, if you have legal questions that you want to ask me, you can call my office at 850-435-4661. Again, that's 850-435-4661. And I always offer a free initial consultation. So if you have questions, you want to set up an appointment, I'd be more than happy to meet with you, and I don't charge people for that.
I didn't even know free was in the definition of attorneys. Yeah. So it's pretty cool when you can have an attorney look over your legal documents. That's why Scott it's so nice to have Scott lease office space from us, because he's right there to be able to review your legal documents. And so if you're just tuning in to What Your Money Would Say, I'm your host, Andrew McNair.
And I'm your co-host, Scott Mallett.
And we're talking about the state of healthcare in 2017 and about some really timely benefits to hear about called Veteran Aid and Attendance, which pays up to $2,127 a month to help offset that cost of care. Now, again, I told you this show is live. It's happening right now on March 25th. So ask your question and call the station by calling 850-478-3116. That's 478-3116. And if the line's busy, just keep on calling. And so I want to bring on to What Your Money Would Say, Pete. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. I keep hearing you say that it's if you are eligible. And since I went through this with my mother and now my mother-in-law, I'm finding out that if you have almost any money in the bank, you are not eligible. Would you please cover what makes you eligible for these benefits?
Yeah, I'll be happy to. So when it comes to the financial side, we've helped families that have had $1,000 coming in per month from Social Security, and we've helped families that made $9,000 a month in pension income. We've helped families that had, $5,000 they had to borrow from all three children, and we've helped families get these benefits that had $4.2 million. It's all about how the assets are structured, and it's all about how you make that application, because on that application, they're going to count certain incomes and not count others. So that's why you want to work with someone like ourselves that does, 250 plus applications a year to make sure you're filling out the application correctly.
Well, I wish you would give me some examples. So let me give you two, because I know two very intimately. And the reason I'm saying this is because we did go to experts, so-called experts in this area, and essentially we were told that they're not going to be eligible for these benefits. So the first one was,
do you mind if I give you an example couple, Pete?
You want to do that?
Yeah, I'll give you an example couple. So let's say I have Jim and Sally, and both of them collectively make $3,000 a year, either in pensions or Social Security income. But they're spending $3,000 or $4,000 a month in assisted living. So as long as they're negative by $1, they will get the full benefit. Now, if they're not negative, that's okay too. They just reduce the benefit for every dollar you're positive. So that's the income test. And so what we do during an intake, which, I don't want to, that's why I kind of stopped you. I don't want to bring, the personal information on this, with thousands of people listening. So that's why we have the intake. At the intake, what we do is we go through all the eligibility requirements, and I can say, yes, they're a candidate, or unfortunately they're not. And you won't get this runaround like maybe they are, hopefully they are. I'll just say, here's where the Code of Federal Regulations says, and yes, they're eligible, or no, they're not.
All right, so then that's the income test. What about the asset test?
So
in other words, let's say someone has $100,000 in an IRA.
Sure. So there's ways to make IRAs non-countable. It depends on what assets we're talking about. Some property is not countable, some is. Some assets are going to be completely countable while others aren't. So that's why we have the intake, because what we do is I'll say, yeah, these assets are not countable, but these could be. And so that's why I highly encourage you to schedule an intake. Did you write down that number by chance?
As a matter of fact, I did, but one case is a moot point already. The other one is ongoing.
I understand.
So
what I would do is I would call and schedule that intake, and so that way, we can have a one-on-one situation. I'll say, yes, they're going to be eligible, or they will be if they spin down this, or if they do something with this. So that way you know your options.
I think we've already gotten that information because we've been told to spend down to a certain point.
And that's probably not the advice I would give, though. So there's a lot of situations where you don't have to spend down your assets. You can work with someone like Scott Malik to not spend down your assets. So, again, I would highly encourage you to schedule an intake by calling 850-380-5137. Pete, thanks for your questions.
Thank you.
All right, have a good weekend. So again, if you're just tuning into What Your Money Would Say, I'm your host, Andrew McNair.
And I'm your co-host, Scott Malik.
And we're taking calls about veterans benefits in the state of healthcare. Again, if the line's been busy, I apologize. Keep on calling. Call the station at 850-478-3116. That's 850-478-3116, and we'll be happy to pick up your call right away. So, continuing on talking about veterans benefits, we talked about that the VA will pay up to $2,127 a month. Sometimes, though, it just doesn't click how strong these benefits are. If you have the veteran single benefit, for example, that's $1,794 a month. Times that by 12, that's over $20,000, almost $21,000 a year. That is eligible tax-free for families. If I turn that into like a CD, let's say you had a CD back in the good old days when they're all paid 4% or more, just paid 4%, $500,000, that would be $20,000 a year in interest. So basically, the veteran single benefit is like having a tax-free CD at 4% based on that basic math equation. These are very important benefits. So that's why you turn over every stone. That's why you look and make sure that you fully understand if you're eligible or not. That's why you make that one extra call just one more time to see if you or a loved one is eligible. Again, you might have heard about this benefit before and said, that didn't apply to me, or I don't think I qualify. It's worth calling the Veteran Benefit Project at 850-380-5137. That's 850-380-5137 to find out for good if your family's eligible or not. We're going to take a quick commercial break, but that's going to give time for people to call in, because again, this show is live, and so please give us a call at 478-3116. If you're thinking about a question, probably someone else is too. So call at 478-3116, and we'll be happy to answer it live on the air.
Today's financial landscape can be rough. One of the most important aspects of planning is choosing the right guide to help you navigate the road to retirement. Andrew McNair and the team at Swan Capital is dedicated to providing the very best service in the retirement planning industry today. Swan Capital is a full-service independent wealth management firm dedicated to providing guaranteed custom income plans that you cannot outlive. Contact Andrew McNair at Swan Capital 850-380-9558. That's 850-380-9558. The difference between Swan Capital and you retire once. We help people retire every day. You should be enjoying your retirement years, not letting worry keep you up at night. Swan Capital. Sleep well at night. Contact Andrew McNair at Swan Capital 850-380-9558. That's 850-380-9558. Again, that's 850-380-9558.
The Veteran Benefit Project, founded by Andrew McNair, president of Swan Capital, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping veterans and widows of veterans with long-term care expenses by qualifying for the VA's Aid and Attendance Benefit. Learn how to receive over $24,000 per year from the VA towards long-term health care. There is absolutely no fee associated with our assistance to the veteran, the widow of a veteran, their families, or any retirement community. Our goal is to preserve the dignity of the veteran and to reduce the dependency on the Medicaid system. Again, learn how to receive over $24,000 per year from the VA. Contact the Veteran Benefit Project 850-380-5137. That's 850-380-5137. 850-380-5137. Look us up on the web, myveteranbenefit.com. At the Veteran Benefit Project, we are committed to helping you secure the benefits you deserve.
Welcome back to What Your Money Would Say. I'm your host, Andrew McNair.
And I'm your co-host, Scott Malik.
And on What Your Money Would Say, we're talking about the state of healthcare in 2017. And so you definitely want to tune in if you have a loved one or facing some, chronic health issues about how to plan for this stage of life. Now, I'll just go briefly through them, but before I do that, I do want to remind you that this show is live. And so if you've been calling, stay steady to keep on calling in because we've had a lot of calls recently. So call the station back at 478-3116. That's 478-3116. We'll be happy to answer your question live on the air.
Also, Robert, I know that you had called in. If you're still listening, I think we had a little disconnect there with the phone situation. If you want to give us a call back, we'd be more than happy to put you on.
Absolutely. So let's go back to the Genworth survey, which shared with you that the average cost of assisted living today is $3,048 in the Pensacola area. It is a pretty pricey thing.
It really is. And, the state average is actually more than that, the Pensacola area is actually relatively cheap compared to the average of the state.
Certainly.
And it's still expensive.
Oh, yeah.
So it's something to think about. I mean, like you said, assisted living right now is $3,100 a month is what Genworth's survey says, and in
10 years though, Scott, even if you're in your 50s or 60s, it's going to be $4,000 a month. So how are we going to pay for it? Medicare, Obamacare, TRICARE, they don't pick up the tab for assisted living. Nursing home costs are $7,500 according to, actually $7,600, almost $7,700 according to this Genworth survey. How is your family going to plan for it? In 10 years, it's going to be $10,300. So we have to start building a plan. If you never plan on leaving your home, we have families right now that are paying $500 a month to stay in their own home, and they're paying $13,000 a month. So these veterans benefits that pay up to $2,127 a month are going to go a long way in paying for that bill. So remember, this show is live. You can call in at 478-3116. That's 478-3116. So I want to bring on another caller. Welcome to What Your Money Would Say. I hear the wind tunnel. Are you there?
Yeah.
Hey, what's your question?
Well, I heard you say a while ago that if you have some assets in the bank or a retirement income and a insurance income after when I was passing, when we spin that down to where it's $1 less than what it costs to stay in the extended living, did I hear that right?
Yeah, you did hear it right, but I just want to make sure you're hearing it perfectly correct. So when it comes to how the income test works, they're going to look at your gross income compared to how much you're spending. So let's say I make $4,000 a month. Now, I'm not taking into consideration long-term care because long-term care is a return of assets, not a return of income. So if I make $4,000 a month, but I'm spending $4,000 a month, then I would get the full benefit of $2,127 a month tax-free from the VA. If I'm positive $1, they just reduce the benefit by $1. For every dollar I'm positive, they reduce the benefit. So what I encourage every family that's listening, like yourself, Robert, is if you think you have a good income, we help families that make $9,000 a month. If you think you have a lot of assets, we help families that have $4 to $5 million in assets. Don't disqualify yourself too quickly.
How about your spouse's insurance? Life insurance.
When it comes to life insurance, again, I could go through every asset class and tell you if it's eligible or not at an intake, but life insurance is not a countable asset. So, again, based on your situation, and everyone's situation is different, that's why we highly encourage families to schedule an intake, which an intake...
So I'll call back later. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Thanks for your question, Robert. So if you're just tuning in to What Your Money Would Say, we're talking about veterans benefits to help offset the cost of health care. And we talked about that the state of health care is not getting any cheaper. If you're in your 50s or 60s, it's going up around 4% every year. Social Security is not keeping up with that.
You don't think the 0.5% that it went up this year is keeping up?
I don't think it's going to help.
With even inflation.
Right. It's not. And so, again, if that's what your plan is, I think we should reconsider it. And a lot of families say, well, Andrew, I don't plan to stay in assisted living. I'm going to ride off into the sunset. The sad reality is that's above your pay grade. You don't get to make those decisions. And so that's why you want to have a plan. We have a plan for the worst, and we hope for the best. So I'll give you a real-life example of a family we helped over at the Brennedy in Fairhope. This is a sweet couple, Jim and Ruth, who are in their 80s. They had, a basic income. They just had 2 Social Security checks. He was self-employed, making $2,700, but they were paying $4,000 to live in assisted living. They were going negative $1,400 a month. You want to scare an 85-year-old is tell them that they're going $1,400 a month every month and that they can't go back to work. It's very frightening. And so when you can help them become eligible for $2,127, that's like going negative $1,400, worrying about money all the time, and then getting over $700 positive. It's night and day. Like one's worrying about money, and the one says, I still can give, gifts to the grandchildren at Christmas time. It really changes people's lives, and that's why I encourage you, do not keep these benefits to yourself. You've probably seen a veteran before. You've met one. You might have one in your civic group, your church group. Share it with them. Share with them the Veteran Benefit Project, and that they can call to schedule an intake. It's a free consultation. We don't charge anything to do the VA application. It's just a free service to the community. And you can call 850-380-5137. That's 850-380-5137. You know, a lot of times people ask us, why do we do it for free? One, because I think that's the right thing to do. I mean, my grandfather he'd probably frown on me charging veterans to help them get the benefits they deserve. And number two, it's a huge community outreach for us. We literally get to speak to thousands of veterans and share with them not only what Scott does with the elder law planning, but we also get to talk to them about the wealth management planning we do. So the VA benefits that we help families seek through the Veteran Benefit Project is the least we can do. So if you're just tuning in, definitely call us. This is a live show. You can call with your question at 850-478-3116. You want to go over those eligibility requirements one more time, Scott?
We absolutely can. Andrew really kind of talked about how it's important to him and, his grandfather. I didn't really talk about my grandfather. My grandfather's the same way. He was in Iwo Jima. He is receiving these benefits. He lives in Texas. I know that I helped, get those benefits and him become eligible for those benefits. And so, even if veterans that aren't living here in Pensacola and them living somewhere else, encourage them to reach out to us. I mean, I have people that I've, helped where we've helped get these veterans
in Hawaii,
all over
Idaho, you name the state, we've probably helped them.
Again, this is a federal benefit. It's not the state of Florida. It's not Pensacola. It's, it's a federal benefit. So it's important to understand that. So we're going to start talking about the qualifications again.
The first one is that you're not dishonorably discharged. We have a lot of men and women that serve our country very honorably, and as long as you're one out of those 5 discharges, which is dishonorably discharged, you'll be okay. The second one is you only have to serve 90 days active service with at least 1 day during a wartime period. And so if you served 90 days active service with at least 1 day during a wartime period, you never had to see a machine gun. You don't even have to know what an M4 is. You never had to be injured. You just had to serve that call. So again, this show is live. I want to bring on Jim to What Your Money Would Say. How are you doing, Jim?
I'm fine, thank you.
Hey, Jim, can you do me one favor and turn your radio down?
Sure,
Thank you so much.
So go ahead with your question, Jim.
I am an 80-year-old Vietnam veteran. I served from November of 1960 to November of 1962. And is that a qualifying factor, having served during that period of time?
You served from November 62 to when?
November of 1960 to November of 1962 in the U.S. Army.
Did you ever go in country?
Did I ever what?
Did you ever go to in country in Vietnam?
No.
Okay.
I just served during that era.
Okay. So I appreciate you calling. Vietnam was from August 5th of 1964 to May 7th of 1975. Unless you're in country, it goes back to 61, February 28th of 1961. So unfortunately, unless you have other military service dates, no. But, it's very important. You never know until you ask, right? So I appreciate you calling in.
Well, I thank you kindly. What you're saying is that period of time is not a qualifying factor of having served.
Yes.
Well, it still makes you definitely a veteran. It just doesn't make the wartime veteran status. So, no, I appreciate your service more than you know.
Yeah, the only exception, unfortunately, for the Vietnam era to go back to 61 is if you were in country.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, like I said, we really appreciate your service, and we can say that. I know, obviously, we can say that as many times as we want, and we wish you were eligible for the benefit. But if those were your dates of service, and you didn't actually go to Vietnam, then you likely are not.
Well, I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you for calling, Jim.
Thanks
you have a
for
wonderful
calling.
weekend. So, speaking of wartime service dates, you remember I said 90 days active with at least 1 day during a wartime period. That means you had to serve from December 7th, 1941 to December 31st of 1946 for World War II. For the Korean War, you had to serve from June 27th, 1950 to January 31st, 1955.
And that sounds a little bit confusing. You only actually had to serve 1 day during those time periods. You don't have to serve that entire time period. I don't.
Correct.
Want that,
Thanks
that
for the
mistake.
clarification.
I just
there.
don't want that mistake to be made.
Certainly. And then Vietnam, again, 90 days active service, 1 day during the wartime period had to be between August 5th of 1964 till May 7th of 1975, and then Gulf War was August 2nd, 1990 to the present. So again, if you served at least 90 days active service with at least 1 day during a wartime period, it wouldn't hurt to make sure that you have all the documents in place. It wouldn't hurt to make sure you're eligible for these benefits, because long-term care insurance is very expensive. And if you're thinking about not doing long-term care insurance, then you definitely need to make sure you're eligible for these benefits. Because the cost of care, as we talked about, this show is all about the state of healthcare in 2017, is it's not getting any cheaper. And you want to make sure that you're getting all the benefits you're eligible for. Because a lot of people think Obamacare, TRICARE, and Medicare is going to pick up the tab of assisted living, but it's not. Even if you're in your nursing home and it's $7,500 a month, you have to spend down your assets in the state of Florida to $2,000. $2,000 in your name. That's not a lot of money.
Now, he's talking about Medicaid, which
Correct.
is something different than obviously what we've been discussing the whole time. But he is right. In order to receive Medicaid and not be a private pay situation, Medicaid is the only assistance outside of these other benefits that would pay for these types of facilities. And so he is right. The qualification in Florida is, and the income is substantially lower. You can't earn hardly anything, and your assets are extremely low too.
And the other thing I always like to highlight is you can only have $2,000, but your spouse can only have $120,000. That's nothing.
And I know we're not talking about Medicaid, but Medicaid has what's called a 5-year look-back period. So you can't do the type of planning for Medicaid that you can for the veteran benefit that we're talking about.
And so how many families honestly plan 5 years in advance, Scott?
Very few.
Very few.
I don't even know what I'm having for dinner tonight.
Well, you got that home chef thing.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, so you're set.
So he's just making shout-outs for commercials here.
Oh, my gosh. Well, I'd like to get sponsored, but, All right, so continuing on. So third is disabled or over age 65. If you're getting close to age 65, again, these benefits were made for you, so you definitely want to make sure you're eligible. The fourth one is you have to have a medical need or help with your ADLs, your activities of daily living. And so that's a jargon speak that basically means, do I need help with medication management, transportation, household activities? Do I have trouble with my eyesight? Am I blind? There's a long list of things that could potentially meet those ADLs for you and get those benefits.
And household activities is kind of vague. He means cooking, cleaning, laundry, bathing. Those are all things.
I probably need help with that.
We both know that. I'm sitting next to him. He needs help with bathing.
I smell good. All right, so when it comes to these veterans benefits,
smelled them,
okay, thanks. These 3 benefits are based on your marital status. The first one is veteran single. A veteran single is if you're never married, divorced, and you're somehow single, they're going to pay $1,794 a month for the rest of your life.
Benefit.
It is, especially when you think about $3,600 a month you're forking out to an assisted living. It's a big benefit.
And we know a lot of the, we're not. I don't want people to get the impression that we're talking bad about these facilities, that they're overcharging or anything like that. We know a lot of these people that are at these facilities.
Oh yeah, they're close friends. And these assisted livings, I'd move in tomorrow if I was 55 or older, because these are nice places. These are like a cruise ship without the water. They're they're doing activities. They got 3 square meals. It's fantastic.
We just want you to be, with the realization that they are expensive, and at some point or another, if you don't grow old, obviously if you're not growing old,
it's a bad day for you.
And so people always, if you grow old, you're going to need these at some point or another.
That's right. Then we have the widow's benefits. And again, I hate to call out people, but if you care about the planning for your family, you need to make sure that your spouse is taken care of, and making sure that she or he could be eligible for $1,153 on top of their income. That would be a really nice anniversary present. So that would be very good.
Yeah, and like I said, the widow is the most underserved of all of the benefits in this benefit criteria, because a lot of widows don't think that they're eligible because they're not the ones that served.
Yeah, but without having those military spouses, the men and women that serve our country overseas couldn't do it. They can't take care of 3 kids at home while they're trying to protect our country.
100% agree.
Yeah. The last benefit is the veteran and spouses. These are the veterans and spouses that are, struggling with making that decision of maybe one of them or both of them going to assisted living, and they're saying, well, maybe we'll have to sell the house. And before you sell the house, you need to make sure that you're eligible for $2,127 a month, tax-free for the rest of your life. So if you're tired of hearing me drone on and you want to find out if you're eligible, you need to call at 850-380-5600. 850-380-5137. Gosh, I talk fast. 850-380-5137. That's a 30-minute intake. Basically, we go over the phone or in person to see if you or a loved one is eligible. So call. No one's there right now. Everyone's enjoying their beautiful weekend. But call, leave a message. Someone will call you ASAP on Monday.
And if you have questions about legal documents or anything on the legal side of it, feel free to give my office a call at 850-435-4661. Again, that's 850-435-4661.
Have a great weekend.